we all know the story of Paul on his road to Damascus. He falls off his horse. He gets the vision. He gets blinded, has the vision, has this whole conversation with Jesus. Split second, wakes up, and everyone else says, like, you just fell off your horse, and all of a sudden you're blind? What the heck happened? And it's like, so not realizing everything Paul went through in that split second, he had this really long conversation, and but then these people don't see anything about it. But then Paul is stuck. He just had this great revelation, but he's also blind. So he got hit with a 1-2 punch. But we have to sit there and think about it. We have to like harness our strength. Look at what Paul was kind of going through. So it's like he just learned this great thing. He found out that he was on the wrong path. He's got to go and change his life around and everything else. But now he's hit with this dilemma. He can't see. But in that moment, he had to gather his strength and make a decision and go forward. And that's going to be kind of the topic about this one, because that choice was not easy. And as we're finding out, in a lot of times in life, when you have these Damascus-style moments, these life-changing moments, they are not easy and they're not meant to be. How many people here have children? Nearly everyone. What happened when you saw that pregnancy test stick that said positive? That's this. That's this. It was all fun and games until that showed up. And then it's like, oh, now our life is changing. Now we made the choice, and now we got to pursue it. We're going to be parents. Another example for me from a Damascus moment for me was my choice to join the military. Because it is a life-changing event. Anyone who's ever seen at least the first part of Full Metal Jacket with the whole basic training scene knows the story. I remember it was actually kind of funny because they would show us that before we started basic training, we were all terrified. Oh my gosh, this is what we're going to go through. By the end of basic training, we came out of that. We would see that same scene, those same parts of it again. We're laughing, we're having a good time. It's like, oh, that was like the best times of our life. It's like a totally different change. So when you start going through these things, so when you start reflecting back on choices you've made, I was listening to a lady over there. She's made a choice to move into a new house. It's a big choice, and they're renovating first before they move in. So they're putting a lot of effort in there. So they make a lot of choices. Not easy, not meant to be, because the struggle adds weight to it. It gives it meaning. When you do something and you invest your time, your energy, blood, sweat, tears, you invest into that choice. When I went and joined the military, 100 push-ups a day, that was buy-in. You're in it. You're going to get stronger. You're going to get fit. But then they do things like they throw you through a confidence course, live fire exercises, all this other stuff, and to build up that strength, that resiliency, at least for a soldier, to handle stresses of combat. With the pregnancy test stick, when you start buying the diapers, the formula, and you're realizing the stuff's not cheap, the crib and everything else, and the onesies, then you start realizing, yeah, we're in this. We're going through with this. But as I was reading through the thing, one of the questions that sections came up was overlapping lessons. Paul was going through this. He had the blindness, he had the revelation, he had the mission that he was supposed to go to prosecute Christians. So he had all these things at the same time. And all of us know here that when it rains, it pours. When we get one bad thing, it's compounded with other things. Like we have debt, and next thing you know is we got the tax bill, and then we got this, and we got this, and we get the summons, and all kinds of bad things happen. But something that was always, then as I was reading through this line that caught my mind was we may have the experience, but we miss the meaning. And within Spiritism, we kind of have this thing where if we fail in one incarnation, past life, we repeat it in the next life, but the conditions will be different. And because we had the experience, but we missed the meaning. So my daughter right now, she's struggling. She went through 3rd grade. They had a mandatory test to see if she goes on to 4th grade. She failed. So now she's in summer school. And they're going to retest her again at the end of the summer school, saying, did you learn in this short 4-week period enough to proceed on to 4th grade, or are we holding you back? Did you learn from your experience? Did you take the meaning from your experience? Or are you going to have to go back and do it again and hopefully catch it the second time around? How many times have we done this? You can sit there and think of something as mundane as speeding tickets. You don't get one speeding ticket in your lifetime, you get multiple. So you got to have that. You don't catch the meaning, you have the experience so many times over. So, and many oftentimes, I try to boil this one down, I'm sorry. I know Levy loves it when I get these things simple, but this one, I boiled it down as much as I could. Because more often than not, when it comes time to make a decision, I'll use the pregnancy one again too, because it mostly appeals to the mother. She's the one that's going to be carrying this child for 9 months. She's going to be dealing with all the pain, all the kicks, everything for 9 months. Husband's out of that equation. He'll jump in after the child's born and says, okay, now you can take care, you can change the diaper, you can do the feedings and everything else. I need to rest and recover. But for that moment of time, there is no one else. If you get in a car wreck on the side of the road, it's you who have to make the phone call, to sit there and call the tow truck. I mean, it's great that we have OnStar and like our phones. Some of these phones have crash thing. Oh, we see you had a crash. Do you want us to call for help? But there are times when there is no one. I mean, right now we have this the tragedy with the submersible that went down to the Titanic. There's no one. They're 2 miles down in the water. There's not another submersible for thousands of miles. They had to scramble to try to get one in time and try to race down to that, find it, and then try to retrieve it. It's a lot to happen. So you sit there and you think about it. How many times in our life have we been caught in a position where it was just us? We do this, like I remember going to college. First day in college, I was like, oh, freedom, away from the parents and everything else. And next thing you know, it's like, oh, I got to do laundry? I'm hungry. I don't know how to cook. Yeah. So then, I got very good at learning how to microwave ramen noodles for at least the first 3 months, and then eventually, I started having to do a little research and figuring out how to cook something a little bit more substantial.
That was the period that Paul was blind.
Yes. And then the other thing too, we also have to take into account, all have different roads. Each of us is on our own individual path. No one has the same path. You may want to, you may think you do, but you don't. Especially when you got like husband and wife together, spouses, you think they're on the same path together. Yeah, they still deviate a little bit. Because you sit there and think about like his profession, her profession, who's the one that's taking care of the children the most, and the involvement in there, all kinds of different situations and scenarios. But at least within, as we've learned through us, and why we always have multiple speakers up here, is that way we're getting multiple points of view. So that whenever, like Peter has his things from his point of view, he shares some wonderful insights. Al, he shares his wonderful insights. Sabrina was here a couple of weeks ago. It's like we got a few new ones that are going to be joining us in the ranks here shortly. And we're going to hear their opinions, their voices on how the doctrine, the teachings within, how that applies to them, how they see it. Because it may give all of us our own perception, which is part of the reason why this book is up here. Why are we learning from Paul in his road to Damascus moment? Because we're sitting here trying to say, like, hey, what Paul went through, we went through. We're going through. Many times over. Now, his is most famous because it's in the Bible, but that doesn't mean ours is any less significant. Going in with your comments at the very beginning. Life-changing decisions require us to take a stand while dazed and confused or wrestling with a high degree of uncertainty. He was talking us with the middle road. It's like, can you take the middle road? Because you don't want to go to the extremes and everything else. You want to try to get the most information as possible. But when you're in this circumstance, there is no chance to know. Again, you get that positive pregnancy test stick, you have no idea what that child's going to be like. Are they going to be colicky? Are they going to be an angel? Are they going to end up in jail? Are they going to go off and become a doctor? Who knows? Well, God does. But you don't. You're going to go through this anyway. You're going through this process regardless.
There was no middle ground because Paul hit the ground.
Paul hit the ground, yeah. Yes. He did not have the force where he can stop 6 inches off the ground. So and the other good thing about this is test our resolve. When you hit these moments, like it says, pregnancy test, especially the pregnancy test, that hits your resolve. Okay? You're sitting here thinking like, okay, I got this. Am I going to hit the abortion button, or am I going to sit and bring this life into the world? I mean, we know where the doctrine stands on that, but I'm not going to go too much more into that since it's politically charged. But still, the resolution, the resolve is there. Same thing. You choose a profession. You have the resolve to learn and master your question. Whether you have to go through college, learn all the theory, or if you're going to go and be a tradesman, learn how to do your trade. And do it well. Because you need to be able to master that. So you have to have the resolve to sit there and say, I'm going to do this. One of the funny ones reading through this, and like I said, I'm basically boiling down highlights I took from the chapters. So this is basically the book itself, but I'm trying to condense for the lecture. Intertwined and independent. The lessons don't have to be, they can be intermixed with each other. Blindness doesn't necessarily have to be related to his revelation. They could be two separate things, but yet they were intertwined. Because as we would later on find out in Paul's story, the blindness gets cured by the person he was trying to arrest. He goes into Damascus and then is healed by the person he was there to persecute. So that linked the two together. That was the middle ground. You're going to do that the whole time, aren't you? Go ahead, I don't mind. But one of the big things too, and I alluded to it already, because it wasn't just Paul. It was I believe it's what Ananias was. Ananias was the person that he was persecuting. Ananias had to have his own sort of Damascus moment, because now all of a sudden he had the choice. Did he have the courage to come help Paul and cure his blindness? So he had to move forward with the resolution against the odds. And this is a big one for us, because we're sitting here looking at it with everything that's going on in our lives. It's like we got to face things. We got to make changes. I'm over there. I got a book over there called Planetary Transitions, and I was just reading the section there about how there's like a battle of good and evil metaphorically speaking, because there's no evil spirits and no good, but you have all these spirits they're trying to do the bad influences. And you got those that are trying to do the positive influences. And they're competing. So they're trying to break apart and separate and destroy what is good, and the good is trying to reassert and says, hey, no, this is it. But in many cases, and we see this in not only in the doctrine, but we also see it in the Bible itself with Jesus, the supreme example. He had the resolve to stand up. When he's tempted to sit there and say, like, I know you're thirsty, you can call up water anytime you want, you can turn a rock to a loaf of bread and eat. You're God. You can do it. Why don't you do it? Well, he has the resolve. And he's facing against all the odds. Why do we take Jesus dying on the cross so much into our hearts? For Christians, mostly for Christians. I know Spiritism caters to all religions, Muslim, Jews, Buddhists, all of them. But for the Christians in the group, that has a meaning to it because, again, it's the same thing. He could have just let go, walked off the cross, and says, you know what, I don't need this. Poof, he's done. But he didn't. He stood through and he bore it all. He had the resolve and the resolution to go through it, to show us that it's possible. And we grew, and so much, especially with these early Christians, Peter, Paul, all of them, they took that example to heart. I mean, to have it was Peter crucified upside down. He says, I'm not worthy to be crucified as my Lord and Savior was. So he was turned upside down. Decision to move forward. In many cases, like I said, even though I was here in blindness, because Paul was infected with blindness, but the healing may be to move ahead. Again, since the majority of us are here are parents in this room, being a parent has probably been the most rewarding experience in your lives compared to beforehand. Am I right? Yeah? So in a way, you can take blindness out and just saying by being a parent, you had the healing. You found another layer of yourself by being a parent. You found another layer of yourself by becoming a professional. Like, whenever you go through these moments and you change your course of your life just that little bit, you're changing your universe. And in that course of that change, it's like you gain from that. I kind of preceded myself here just a little bit, but when you go in a new direction, you break orbit. This is something that we see a lot taught in the doctrine, especially when you start saying, like, as you elevate your spirit, your friends, your family, those that were used to having you around at that level want to hold you back. They're like, no, don't go off and do this. We want you to stay as you are. Not realizing you're going off to be a better person, a better place. And unfortunately, for many of them, it's a place they're not willing to go yet. But you have to have that resolve to go through. When you look at the beginning of the Damascus story with Paul, he is surrounded by people around him. But they didn't want, once they found out he was blind and incapacitated, they didn't want to keep going. They would say, let's go back. But Paul was the one who said, no, I'm going to keep going. You guys can go back if you want, but I'm going to keep going. And they did. They split. The majority did go back. It was Paul and one other person went forward. So you have this thing where you go on and you progress. It's funny, it's like between this and like my own family, they're not fully on board with me being part of the doctrine, teaching the doctrine, everything else. They prefer I go back to being on my mom's side a Catholic and my dad's side a Lutheran. And just to be happy going to the church and everything else, but I wasn't happy with that. It didn't fulfill my faith, my desire to learn and understand more. Because I challenged those faiths. I challenged their dogmas. It was like, why do you do this? I go to the Catholic Church. Why do you ring a bell before you get, each time you do the body, ding, blood, ding, they ring a bell. They have all these symbolisms and things. Now, those symbols may have meaning. But do they know the meaning, and does that meaning still have purpose? I'm going to steal Peter's thunder now. He pointed to it, logic and science, with spirituality. There's a good chance that way back in the day, there could have been a scientific method, but since the science of the day was not there, they used something mystical. Maybe that's why Jews can't eat pork. They can't eat pigs, because they wallowed around in their own muck, their own stuff. They had no way of cleaning the animal. They're out in the desert. There's no water. There's no way they could it may be a case where they could never prepare pork so that they could eat it. And that's why it's banned. Or it could be something else. Because they'll eat their own. And God doesn't want people eating things they will eat their own. So, but those are logical explanations. But at the time they were just saying like, thou shalt not eat pork. Just like how many times have we gone through and gone over and debated the 10 Commandments, the Golden Rule, all that stuff. We still debate it even to this day. 2,000, 5,000 years later, we're still debating all those questions. And is it murder or is it kill? So, still doing it to this day. But as we start improving ourselves and going to different on different levels, we start, not only do we leave some of our friends behind, but we find new friends in our new circle. And it's funny when you ever read the self-help books, like How to Succeed in Business, they always tell you to don't hang out with your coworkers, hang out with your boss. Because if you want to get a promotion, you need to start learning from your bosses, their boss's boss. You kind of aim higher. So you interact with the people above you so that you get figure out how they're doing their jobs and everything else, their demeanor and everything else. So you emulate that. Next thing you know, you're promoted. And it's kind of the same thing. You're pulling yourself out of another orbit into a different orbit. I kind of already beat that one to death, but it's like they want to keep you where you are. So, but this was an interesting line that Dan wrote in the book. When we have our friends, do we talk to them, your innermost fears and desires? Do you go deep with them? How often do you do that? You go within our little group, we can go deep when we're talking spiritual matters. We can get real, because that's why we're here, to learn and discuss. But what about something else? Like, people that know me know that I read about spirituality, and I also follow politics, because they're very much interacting. They're linked with each other, seriously. So I would love to debate politics and see, and how does what we've learned in the doctrine, the Bible, whatever, the text, how that should be influencing politics. But I can't discuss that here. There's Republicans, Democrats, Independents, all over the map. And it'll start a firestorm and everything else. Don't want that. Because what is Spiritism meant to do? Bring us all together. Because especially in the grand scheme of things on politics, it doesn't matter if you're Democrat, Republican, Independent, whatever, because we're all humans. We're all human beings. And as part of this, and I had that previous slide, it was saying we are all on different roads. Because we were on different roads, we have different points of view. And that is why you have people on the left, you have people on the right, because they have different points of view from the things they've experienced or the things that they've learned. But it's the sharing of ideas that can bring the people together. For those who follow, like again, like I said, when you look at American history, you can see like the great compromises that led to the formation of the United States. Why we have a House of Representatives and a Senate. It was a huge compromise. There's lots of compromises because you had people on one side, people on the other side. They couldn't agree. So they had to do, as Peter mentioned earlier, find the middle ground.
You're going to change the title.
I'm blending the two together, and that's one of the reasons I like coming here and lecture, because that's an interesting curveball every time. I prepare for something totally different, then he throws that in there, and it's like next thing it's like, that's good. So, and I touched on this one already, but like I said, as I mentioned before with me going through boot camp, terrified of watching the first half of Full Metal Jacket. Now I watch it, I laugh, I have fond memories. I changed my universe in 14 weeks called boot camp.
Well, Paul was even more than that, right?
Hey, Paul was way more than that.
Because when he embraced Jesus, like every single friend of his,
Gone.
Nobody wants to stay with him.
Mm-mm. And for those who've read the book Paul and Stephen over there, that was through Emmanuel, through Chico Xavier, when you go through and see that, read that section, the spiritual story that says of what happened to Paul for those 3 years after the Damascus moment. Because he thought I'm already a well-known speaker and things. I just got this revelation. I'm going to step out and present. And he flopped big time. They were not ready for him. So, but he humbled himself, went back, and went on a journey. Because he says, okay, I learned this stuff, but I haven't mastered this stuff. So he would go through, and he did a lot of tests to humble himself. If you read the book, he was sitting there. He would sit there and repair tents. He would go and he'd do manual labor. He went from being a member of the Sanhedrin to not having to get his hands dirty to doing, all of a sudden he's sitting there sewing together tents and everything. He was working with his hands, getting calluses and everything else. He was wearing grubby clothes all the time. He humbled himself. And it's fun. And then you see that when he starts writing his epistle lessons, how much he keeps humbling himself. And he says, I'm not worthy. I am not worthy. Because I got introduced to somebody far superior. And when I compare myself to Jesus, I am nothing. But that person up above and says, hey, I believe in you. I have a task for you. And he goes and does it. So, part of this one is the decision to go. So, sheer power of our will. We cannot borrow or steal it. There are no shortcuts when it comes to major change. Everything's work. Again, I'll bring up the pregnancy test and the parenting. Great case in point. To raise a child is a sheer act of will. I'm talking John Wick levels of will. To go ahead and raise a child. And it doesn't have to be your child. It could be foster child, stepchild, anything. But to sit there and pull up that force of will, that strength within, to go ahead and go forward. I see that also. You can go back. We just celebrated, a few weeks ago, we just celebrated the anniversary of D-Day. Look at the force of will. For 6,000 people, men, to go ahead into hell on the beaches of Normandy, fighting for a cause they thought was just. The sheer act of will to do that job. And that's normal men. You see examples of this everywhere. So why can't you find it within yourself? You probably already have. I guess this, we're all parents here. We all have that sheer force of will to bring a child into this world. So we have that within us. And there's no shortcuts. There's how many times have we heard that joke? There's no instruction manual that comes with the baby. It's just the baby, no instruction manual. No shortcuts. Now, you're in the moment, you're in this, you're caught in that moment of making that choice. Are you going to step into the unknown, attempt the change, alter your life forever? Or are you going to turn around and go back where it's comfortable and safe? You can sit there, like, so I'll touch on that briefly again, the pregnancy. You live a life of fun, going out, go party and everything else. Pregnancy test comes positive. I'll just abort it and go back to having the life I had. Or step up and be the parent. Here's your choice. It is a choice. That's where I was challenging Peter, because I remember reading this line here. We don't always get the chance to wait to develop a full understanding of the circumstances. We can't wait 18 years to figure out, should we have this child or not? No, it's coming, whether you like it or not. You got to make the choice. The choice is there. The choice is now. And again, do you have the courage? Do you have this force of will to go forward?
The thing is that human nature hates change.
True. That's going back to that force of will.
So you need to be hit by a light, hard, hit the ground hard in order to feel the pain move.
Yeah. But then again, going back to it, even something simpler as how many of us have wanted to sit there and say, we're going to get fit. We're going to go to the gym. We're going to start working out. We're going to lose fat. We're going to start building some muscles and everything else. And then you start going to the gym and everything else like, whoa, this is hard work. Well, if you want the results, you got to pull up that force of will, that strength to keep on going. Otherwise, you're going to sit there like, I could go back to being lazy again. I'll pull on another, oddly enough, as like the one I talked to Dan about was one of my aha moments when I learned Spiritism was when we pulled Newton's 3 laws and put spiritual context to it. In this case, inertia. Body at rest tends to stay at rest. Body in motion tends to stay in motion unless acted upon by an outside force. You got to look at Paul. Fell off the horse. Outside force acted on him, called Jesus. Tell him, hey, this is not your path. So he forced him on another path. You get that pregnancy test, that's an outside force. It's changing you, it's forcing you to go somewhere. So you have that force, that active outside force. But the funny thing is we can generate our own force from within. We can make the choice within. We have an artist here, and I'm sure every so often he gets this wonderful idea to come up and develop a wonderful painting. And then he has to sit there and say, you know what? This is one worth painting. I'm going to put the canvas, do a sketch, start throwing paint up there, and he creates some wonderful artwork. The commitment, sitting like, yes, I'm willing to paint that. Whatever that inspiration was, that came to my mind, I'm willing to paint that, and he commits. And you don't do it in a day, do you? I'm saying, I'm probably, months? Yes. There, see. Commitment. One of the good things I like, and it's why I'm here on the stage right now is this last sentence, this bottom sentence right here. We grow by moving forward and engaging with what's ahead with when we walk. As I'm learning something new, as I've done something different, as I'm interacting with new people, I'm on a different path. And usually we find people along the way that are willing to teach. I'm up here to teach you, at least my point of view. And it comes in all different shapes. Teachers come in all different shapes and sizes. Sometimes the teacher is your child. So I actually got a picture, and this one's in the book. I'm not going to go too much into Vygotsky's model and everything else, but they were basically, I was just focusing on the picture here. What we can do and learn by ourselves, so it's all self-study. What we can do and learn with the help of others, so that's the engagement. That's what we're doing right now. We're in this level right now. And then there's stuff that's beyond your reach. But guess what? This moves. As you learn, as you progress, it moves out. More of this disappears. Now, of course, we can also sit there and say, like, this is like just like the universe, it's endless. But we're still growing. We're still impacting that. But we have people that will come in, this more knowledgeable person that comes in and helps us to expand this thing outwards. So we grow. We learn. We become something different. So discomfort. We all had, like it says, brought up a lot of things that bring up discomfort. Pregnancy, very, very uncomfortable. Boot camp, extremely uncomfortable. Maybe not as uncomfortable as pregnancy, but it's up there. So getting into a car wreck, that's a lot of discomfort. And especially if you have something that happens afterwards, a change. I have a friend in my community. He lost his arm in a motorcycle accident, so he can't ride anymore, and it bothers him. He's still struggling with the fact that he no longer has his left arm. But in the other cases, like in the meantime, I sit there and I look at it, and it's like he is so skilled with just the one arm. We sit there and we play basketball and everything else. He has these one-handed shots, and he just sits there and he just sinks some basket after basket after basket after basket.
How tall is he?
About my height. So he's not a basketball player or anything else like that, but we'd sit there and we'd shoot hoops or we'd throw frisbees or something like this, and that hand of his is like it's just lightning. He just sit there and we're sitting there throwing a frisbee around, and he grabs it. He's only got the one hand. I'm sitting there clapping it with two hands or like grabbing it with two hands, and he doesn't have that second hand, so he's got that raptor grip that just sits there and grabs it. He's quick as lightning, and he grabs it and snatches it right out of the air. Because he learned it. He adapted to it. But he still has his discomfort, and he's still learning. But the other thing too is when you go through discomfort, you notice that pain is temporary. When you got someone that they're going to the gym, they're working out, they're lifting heavy weights, yeah, their muscles are sore for a while. But then as the soreness goes away, and they're a little stronger. Pregnancy at the very end, when you're delivering a child into the world, extremely painful. But then afterwards, the pain fades, and you have a new son or daughter. And there's hope, and it's like, but of course, when you're going through those entire 9 months of pregnancy, there is that hope of having a healthy child. You're enduring that pain. You are enduring that discomfort for that goal. Like I said, boot camp. I endured all that pain and things to be capable. Not only am I capable of handling higher levels of stress, because now I've been exposed to it. It's like, oh, okay, this is nothing compared to what I experienced, blah, blah, blah. So I have that higher tolerance. We get to feel that challenges are nothing more than opportunities. This is a mindset. This is where things start getting interesting. Because you had to sit there and turn around and sit there like, oh, this hurts, but I'm doing this because this is my opportunity to grow stronger, to have a child, to be a proficient soldier, or even if you're going through college, I know doctors, they work these insane hours, and they're during their residency period, and afterwards, after that residency is up, and it's like, okay, they're pushing through all this discomfort. They're taking that opportunity and saying, no, I'm going through this now to be the better doctor. When this is over, when my residency is over, I hope to be a better doctor because of this discomfort, of this pain, of these learning experiences. I love this line, and it's so true, because I've been sitting here wrestling with this one for, months. Connecting our minds to our hearts is the longest 20-inch journey we will ever take. How many times have you gone through life and realizing your heart and your head are not aligned?
What is the question? How many times what?
When you reflect back, your heart and your mind are not in sync. How long will it take you to do that, to figure out what it is and everything else? There was a woman I loved her with all my heart, but she just wanted to be friends. My mind knew, we've got to be friends. Heart wanted to have a relationship with her. Struggled. More than 2 years. Still struggling to this day. I have not completed that 20-inch journey.
How long does it take her to take her personality out of the case?
Or the ego or something like that, yeah. But there's other things into it. Yeah, ego. Ego is a big one. How many times, especially when I go back to that first question with, have you learned the meaning of your lesson? How many times do you have to fall down before you realize that, oh, I need to improve something. I need to change something. Edison with his light bulb. How many times can he fail to make a light bulb before he finds one that works? Thousands. But you learn from that. So this is another mindset change, and I gotta speed things up real quick because I'm running out of time. Many times we need to reward failure over success. Success means you just made the level. It's a prize. You got your prize. Okay, did you learn anything from it? Maybe. But if you learn more from failure, you skin your knee or something like this, that pain, that discomfort, you learn from that. You get that speeding ticket, you have to pay it off. You're going to learn from that.
I did not learn yet.
So, okay. So, we need to start looking at failures, but then failures is a learning opportunity. And this is going with the history. The Roman Empire, British empires, both got stagnant. They were so good on their successes, they didn't know how to handle a failure. So they never innovated, they never changed. So guess what? And then they got disrupted, and then there was people that couldn't do new things. I'm kind of been paying attention to this, especially in the world of electronics and technology and things like this. And it's funny how you go, for those of us that remember, like when the first cell phones came out, they looked like a normal phone with the buttons. And we started doing the text speak where you had to push a button so many times to create one letter, and you keep doing that to create a little message. And you had that, and that was how you had to send messages. And then BlackBerry came out with their little keyboard, and then the first iPhone came out, and they're like, oh, you can do this on the screen with a touch screen. So now we have all touch screens now. Now we're looking at possibly going into VR or augmented reality. So we're still innovating, but for a while there, we're stagnating. I mean, how long has the iPhone been out? More than 10 years? We haven't really proceeded since then. I was watching a quick YouTube article about the speaker in your earphones. Hasn't changed in decades. How they package it, how they do it, and everything else. That's all kind of new and fancy, but it's still the same technology from the 50s. Hasn't changed in a bit. Dan threw one in there. When you fall, you want to fall forward. That way, because you're learning from your mistake. That way, you fall, you pick yourself up, but now you're that much wiser. You've progressed that little bit step down the road. And you can do it fast. Pick yourself up, keep moving forward. So you fall forward, then you pick yourself up and you keep going. Now you're making progress. And usually you see, unfortunately, like it says, me being in war history specifically, if you look at World War II, the United States goes in, totally unprepared for what the German forces had, everything else. So now they all of a sudden had to backtrack and they had to start innovating quickly. They started iterating to find better tanks, all kinds of different things, just to stand up to a level of an opponent that was far superior to them. They had to catch up quick so they could beat them. So they were failing forward. Unfortunately, with World War II, it cost lives. And then within the realms of Spiritism, we don't want to even mess with lives. We want to fall. We want to fall in our own life and everything else with no impact, pick ourselves up and keep going with minimal damage, except to our egos. So we hit that point. Are you going on to Damascus? Or are you going to go back to Jerusalem? Jerusalem is your comfort zone. Everything you've known, everything is being comfortable. Or are you going to go do something new? Be daring. Go on an adventure. Because it's like, that was like Damascus' thing. Is it seductive? It's like, is that your path to riches? Is that your path to fame? Is that to whatever? That's your desire. That's your dreams. Are you chasing your dreams? Are you chasing your Damascus? Or are you going to sit there and say, nope, I'm happy in my mom's basement, Jerusalem. And this is not a mutually exclusive choice. Jerusalem will always be there. You'll always have mom's house. You may go off and go tour the world and everything else. You come back from your tour, totally changed, all your experiences and everything else, and there's still mom's house. There's still Jerusalem. You've been to Damascus and then you still go back to Jerusalem. But now you're only visiting. You're not staying. Because you're going to go back and you're going to go find another Damascus. So, I'm going to see if I can... Ooh, I really got to speed up. So I think I'm just going to skip this slide entirely and go right to the end. So the main points. Sheer power of our will and convictions will take us on. We have to find the power, willpower, and conviction. We have to learn and appreciate the discomfort. No pain, no gain. And we need to have the growth mindset, willing to grow and to learn.